Hello and welcome to this next session for Karate Framework, which is used in test automation. Now, in this session, we are going to see some additional keywords which are in the HTTP section. So, if you see URL, path, request, all the way up to retry until accept the SOAP action. So, these are keywords and their relevant uh, items and their details we are going to see in this session. So, before that, before starting, just we'll have a recap about HTTP request and response items. So in HTTP request, a typical HTTP request has five major parts. So we have a verb, which is basically the HTTP method such as get, put, post, delete, patch, and so on. We have the URI, which is basically the base URL of your particular post. Then your HTTP version, request header, which contains some metadata and cookies and some other information, and then the request body. So HTTP request, we have verb, we have URI, HTTP version, header. Header can be of different types. So content type and accept type is a typical one, and maybe we can have authentication. Token or something like that, and then we have a body which can be like any of this form. Now in the response we again have typically four major parts. So response code or status codes, and then we have HTTP version, response header, which has content type and other information, let's say content length, and the response body. So again, HTTP response, we have status codes, which is the main thing which we will verify, and then in the response body we will verify a particular response, for example JSON or XML, and there are typical different types of headers. So now let's get started. So we are going to see URL, path, request method, these 4 5 different parameters which are related to HTTP request. So let's get started. So URL, so how do we specify URL? There are different parameters, there are different ways to it. For example, this is case one, and I can simply say star URL, and I can put the URL in single quote, and I can run the program. So I'm just running this Maven project, which is very simple, which was created in the very first session of this entire series, and you can refer to that. So I'm just running it mvn clean test, and I'm just running one simple case one, and I'm just calling this get method and writing the response. So the point to note here is we can specify URL like this. All right, so we are getting a good response. Okay, so if you see no tests are failed, and we are getting this proper HTTP response. Um, Now instead of specifying the URL, which is just like hard coding in the statement itself, what we can do is we can put that in a variable, and we can say star URL equal to whatever base URL or full URL. We can do that. It is the same. The behavior is going to be same. Now next thing is we will see how do we cut out, or how do we differentiate. So if you see here, https up to .in, req this is basically the base URL, and whatever you see next is basically technically called as path. So we can differentiate that, we can cut that. So we have base URL, and we have this section, and then we have custom path 1 or path 2 or whatever, up to as per your requirement. And then what we can do, star URL, base URL plus custom path 2. So here basically we are doing concatenation. Now this is important in the sense that practically, uh, like most of the time practically you will not have any the same URL all the time. Okay, the path might change, or the parameters might change, or query might change. Query parameter, path parameter, there are different sets of parameters. So it is better to put the base URL separate and the path as per your particular scenario. So you have a specific scenario, so you have the specific path, and you can include that. So again, concatenation only. So let's just run it, and we should get successful response. So actually, when this concatenation happens, the URL will still be like this only, but now we have this little bit more freedom that we can differentiate the base URL and the path. All right, so if you see, the URL which was hit was the same URL /api/users2, and it is successful, so no failures. Now this is again not very convenient way to do all the time, because your base URL and your path parameters you are putting in the scenario. Now a reliable project, or a standard way is to put this particular base URL in one external file, a JSON file, and basically the path also in the same JSON file or another JSON file. Now I have this file called as input setup.json. You can put it in a proper folder structure. So I have just put it in src test Java only, but you can put it in proper folder. And here, if you see, this is simple JSON, base URL and custom path too. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to read all this JSON file at once, and I'm just going to use this variable. Now, if you see, what is the advantage of this is you can, append whatever number of paths, customer paths in a JSON file only, and that means that this can be used in any number of feature file or any number of scenarios. So it is very convenient, and that's how it is done practically. So what I'm doing, I'm reading a JSON file into a variable. Let's say my input setup, and my input setup dot base URL, my input setup dot custom path to, and again I'm doing concatenation. So technically I'm just doing a concatenation, but now this time what has happened is I am reading it from some external source, so that I don't have to make many changes in the feature file, but I can just update the JSON file as and when it is required. So let me just run it. Again, basically the finally the URL will form like this, but it is bit convenient here, and bit maintainable. If you are talking about automation framework, end-to-end framework, where there are, let's say there are hundreds of test cases or multiple teams are using, then it is very convenient to you know source or take input from external JSON file. Okay, so if you see, the again the URL which was hit was exactly the same, and we are getting 200 response with proper JSON output. Okay, now this is about the URL keyword. URL keyword. Now let us see. Next example is this one. Next example is the URL is done. Now we will see the path. Now, as we already have discussed, so the path can be set with a different path parameter. Okay, there's a separate variable called as parameters called as path. So we can set as a path also. So let's see here. Case 2 starts, and the final URL what we wanted, again the same thing, but now if you see here, the base URL, uh, the base URL will be like this. So you can say URL equal to URL star URL base URL, and you can say def custom path equal to whatever path you want, and you can set that as a path. So remember, here we are not doing concatenation, we are not doing base URL plus custom path. What we are doing is we are setting up a different variable which is called as different keyword called as path. So now one point to note here is that if you see uh, req dot in, and after that there is slash here, but when I'm specifying the base URL, see here, I have not specified that slash, and in the custom path also it doesn't start with slash. Now what is the uh, what is happening here is that Karate will automatically add that trailing slash character in the URL. At the end of URL, it will add it when you're doing this path, and this will be appended. So that part is done automatically with the path variable. And also it is very convenient. This path we can change. No need of doing concatenation all the time, which might add to confusion. Okay, so let's just run this scenario. So def URL path and git method. Control S, save and run. Okay, so same URL was hit, the same URL what was hit, and we are getting a successful response 200. Okay, and this normal JSON and no failures. Okay, so path parameter. Now coming to this part. Now if you see this path, right? So slash API slash users 2. So here also we can make concatenation, and we can go to any granular level, which might be convenient in some situations. So I'm just giving a demo. I can say custom path 1, custom path 2, and I'm saying path space custom path 1, comma custom path 2. Now here one point to note is the trailing slash character, that is again automatically getting added. So the base URL is up to .in, then path 1, so the slash will be added here, then custom path 1, comma custom path 2, so API slash and then users slash 2, because it is the last, right? So no, so right, so ultimately the URL will become like this, but only thing is it is again divided into custom path, and again I'm setting the path. So again the point here is that we can do again concatenation, or we drill down the path up to granular level. So let's run it again, and again we should get the same response, but this time the path is again customized. Case 2 starts, and again we are hitting the same URL. Case 2 starts, and we are hitting the same URL, and we are getting 200 OK response, and again the required JSON, and no failures. So case 3, so path is done. Yeah. Then now let's see the request. So request is basically when you are sending some body in the HTTP request, then you can send it with request keyword. So how to do that is case 3. So I have this URL. So this reqres.in. So I'm using this website only. Okay, and here there are some only available all different CRUD APIs which we can use. So post API I have used here. So same thing, slash API slash users. Okay, so I have this base URL and then custom path. Okay, and now main thing is what payload I am going to pass as a request body. So I can pass on the payload in this JSON. So if you see here, the same JSON, there is one key, two key and values. So yeah, two key and corresponding to values. Okay, so I'm going to pass this JSON, and then method is going to be post request because I want to send a payload. So put post patch request, they allow to send payload most of the time, and and that's why I'm using post method. So let's run it. So remember, I'm sending the payload directly in the feature file and hard coded, kind of hard coded. So what is expected here? I'm expecting 201 and this 4 5 fields. Okay, so case 3 starts. Case 3 starts, and I'm using the base URL plus concatenated path, and then I'm sending this request payload, and I'm getting 201, and I'm getting the expected response as mentioned in the website, and no failures. Okay, so now if you see this works, but if you see this sending payload in the feature file, and that too hard coded, is very dirty way. So we can read the payload from a feature file, which is a very standard way to do it. So again I have set up this uh, payload post api.json, or you can put any file name .json. I am reading the template, so this is again a template JSON, and I can read this JSON in one variable, read this JSON file in a variable, and I can change the values as per my requirement. So I will read it in my payload, and maybe I'll not change it. I will just send it as it is. So I will send it in the request. Now here again, the advantage is that I'm reading it from a file, and then if I want to change anything in the standard payload, I can directly change in the JSON file. So the advantage is I no need to again and again modify in the feature files. Okay. Another way is you can. Okay, let's run it first. So again, the response will be same. We are getting HTTP 201 status code response and a successful response payload. Page 3 starts. Yeah, so we are getting this response name, job ID, and created. Okay, now this is done. Now I can send an image also. I can send the payload as an image also. There is some specific point here to mention. Yeah, so sending a file as the entire binary request body is easy. It is a multi-part. I mean, it is not part of multi-part, but then you can send the JPG file, or you can send any file as a binary format in the request payload. So that can also be done. So this is an example for that. Okay, so this is done. Now let's see the method. So the popular methods are CRUD methods: get, put, post, delete. Again, they have a patch method also, which is used also less frequently. Options, head, connect, trace. These are again other not that much popular methods. So how do you specify? You can simply say method and whatever method name you want to specify. Nothing too fancy. It is very simple like this. Okay, now next case. So status. Now, so when you raise a request, you get a response. So first thing to verify in the response is basically the status code. That is the fundamental thing to check in any API which you are going to hit. So you want to check the status as 200, 201, 400, 500, whatever. Again, instead of status, you can have response status also. So now there is some difference here. So status and response status. So let us see. Um, right. So if you see here, so I'm going to hit this API, okay, and basically this API will not give me HTTP 200, okay, because this user 23 does not exist. So I expect HTTP 404. Now I'm just checking, as usual, I'm checking status equal to 200. So the actual response will be 404, but I'm comparing with 200, so it will fail. Okay, so let's run it first just to confirm whether it runs finally, and then we will proceed. So if the status is not 200, the scenario will fail, the automation will fail, which is what we want. Okay, so the scenario is failed, failure 1. Okay, and if you see here, line number 79, yes, line number 79, it failed. Um, okay, so yeah, we are getting HTTP 404, but we are comparing with 200. Okay, now same thing we can do with status code also. So let me just comment this. So I can check with the variable called as response status also. Now you may think, what is difference between status and response status. Now if you see this line, the next line, so I can compare this status code variable, response status variable, with multiple variables, multiple values. Same thing is not possible with status. The status is a keyword and response status is a variable, I guess, so that you can compare with multiple. So that is the advantage of response status. Now let's run it once. In this case, it is comparing with 200 or 204, but unfortunately, we are getting 404 because the user does not exist. So it should again fail. Okay, so that's failed. And again, you see, it did not evaluate. So this statement, right? The same statement did not evaluate to true. Any of the statement did not evaluate to true. Line number 81. Line number 81. Okay, so that is about the response. That is about difference between status and response status. Okay, and next item is going to be retry until. So Karate has built-in support for retry until in HTTP request until a certain condition has been met. So the default setting for the max retry attempt is 3 with a pole interval of 3000 milliseconds, basically 3 seconds. If needed, this can be changed by using configure. So we will see this. So what is retry until is basically if you want to wait for, there are some APIs which will give a response with some delay, and you have some timeout, some standard timeout. So, but in some cases you may want to wait until you are getting the expected response and then proceed for the next scenario. So for this we have retry space until. Now we will see one example. So case 5 starts and the retry mechanism, right? So I can set that using configure in the feature file itself, or there is one more way to set it up is using the karate config.js. So here I'm just configuring it. So retry, karate configure retry, count 3 and interval, let's say 2 seconds. So standard it is 3 seconds, but I'm just putting it for 2 seconds and retry count will be 3. Okay, so once it is set here, now this retry will be applicable across the automation framework. But so since if you put it here, then it will be probably only for this scenario, or if you put it in background, it will be only for this particular feature file. So you have to choose either universal level or the feature file or scenario level. Okay, so again for this I'm using this particular API, this particular URL, which is again from the same website. So if you see, I'm getting a delayed response. So get with a delayed response. So if you click here, yeah, API delay 3. So here, if you see, I clicked on it and now I got a response after a certain delay. So three seconds after that, I got a response. So same thing I'm going to do here. Um, so URL is like this: retry until response status is 200 and response dot page greater than. So maybe I'm putting one more condition. So if you see here, the response in the response, I'm getting one key called as page and the value will be 1. So I'm expecting it to be uh, greater than 1. So obviously this will fail, but I just want to show you an example. And of course, failures we can analyze more, and that's how we will understand it better. So we're going to hit this API, wait until we are getting the response. So how much time it will wait? It will wait up to this configuration. So it will wait for 2 seconds and it will do it for 3 times. And after that also, if this condition doesn't match, then it will fail. Otherwise it will keep on retrying. So first time hit and it is waiting. Okay, first time failure, then second time hit and waiting, no correct response. So again third time hit, no correct response, and now it should finally finish. Yes, so we have seen that. Now how to check it is basically I'll go to the report and open it in browser, right? So come here, right? So if you see status 200, so method get, so this is the first to try, then second try somewhere here, and third try. Yeah, 3 attempts, so 3 retries are done. Okay, now, right, so now so response code is actually 200, but response dot page is not greater than 1. It is always 1. So 1 is not greater than 1, so that's why it will fail. Now this failure is on purpose so that you can understand where are the failures, where could be the possible failures. So what I'm going to do, instead of here, I'm just going to comment it, and I'm just to do a configure from the feature file or from the scenario level. So now also it should work, but now in this case the retry will be limited. This configuration will be limited to only this scenario, right? So for other scenarios it will still not wait, you will not do retry until. So remember here, you have to try retry until, you have to write it, retry until. Case 5 starts, first time hit and not getting the expected response. Second time hit, not getting expected response. Third time hit, not getting expected response, and that's it, it should fail. Okay, so report will be same, nothing much difference, but now you see this configure is being done here. Okay, so that is about retry until. And yes, so yeah, so with that we are done with the session. Thank you.